Alright guys, thanks for watching this Diagnostic World video. It really is just a short video on 5 things that I don't really like about this car. Hate is a strong word because in total I do like the car. It's just with every car there are a few different, a few little niggly things that you would probably change if you were given the chance to. Now, it's not a witch hunt against this actual car. It's the, sorry, I'm not sure if I said it's the Mercedes C Class W204. So it's a 2007 to 2014 model. And there was obviously a facelift in there as well. And the facelift may well put right a few of the problems that are wrong with this particular car. But I don't hate it. It's just, like I say, just a few little annoying things. So the first thing I don't like about it is the fact that this model here is actually the C Class Sport. So it's the AMG W204 Sport, and nothing about it feels like a sport car apart simply from the styling. The suspension feels exactly the same as a non-sport car, and it's, when I'm going around corners, it just feels very wobbly, almost as if it's like got some sort of American style suspension on it. Certainly not what I would expect of a UK sports car. Not a sports car, if you like, but a sports saloon way. You think that this suspension is probably going to be maybe 10% stiffer, maybe it's even more, but this one is just not. It just feels wishy-washy, and it feels all over the place when I'm going around corners. So that's one of the things that I would certainly like to address with regards to this car. I don't like that. I was expecting a lot better, to be honest with you, but there we go. That is the first thing. I'm just going to turn the heaters off here, maneuver this little junction here. So yeah, so that's the first thing that I don't like about the car. The second thing that I don't like about this car is the constant need for like replacement parts. I'm always needing new parts, always getting dashboard lights on, always getting messages on to say there's a bulb out when I check it and it's not out at all. I'm always getting messages to say that rear seat belts are engaged when they're absolutely not. So that's one thing it just despises. I mean, the amount of parts I haven't owned this car a particularly long time, and the amount of parts that I've had to shell out for and replace in that time have been quite embarrassing. I mean, off the tip of my tongue has been glow plugs, MAF sensor, heater resistor. What else is there? The headrests are broken. Just randomly break. There's so many squeaks and vibrations in the car. It's like, it feels like I'm driving a car from the 1970s or something. Just trying to think of anything else that I've had to replace. There might have been a few other little bits and bobs. So much so that I've had to buy the repair manual on it. It's like a CD-ROM, because for some reason they don't do a Haynes manual on this car, which is quite disappointing because I always find the Haynes manual is quite helpful. But then again, you can get guides for pretty much anything online these days. So, alright, that's the second thing. I've constantly had to shell out for parts. Maybe you'll buy a car which somebody else has had to shell out for parts, and therefore you won't have to. But the way things are going with mine, the messages that are coming up on my screen, looks like I'm still paying out here. Yeah, so that's the second thing. The third thing I don't like about it, and I find this quite strange because I've driven lots of cars which are of similar size to this. I used to own a BMW 3 Series. That was the E90, so it was, you're looking at the same like-for-like model years. And the rear legroom on this car is just really, really poor. It doesn't matter sort of how far you've got your seat forward. There's just not a lot of leg room in there. I mean, I've got a son who sits in his like infant seat in the back there, and his legs are, he's 3 years old, and his legs are obviously very small, but there's just no room for even his legs. So if there were 3 adults in the back of this car, they would really, really struggle. So that's one thing I'm pretty disappointed about, and you could say that's a small thing, but not really if you're buying this car because you've got a family full of long-legged people, or even just a family. 2 adults in the front, that's fine, but 3, you know, teenagers or kids or even adults in the back, I think you're really going to struggle with it, and I'm not really sure why, because the car is big enough. They've got a massive boot, which, yeah, it's good to have a big boot, but I think you could maybe, you know, take a little bit of that space away and have a little bit more leg room. That's the downside towards that. That's the third thing on my list. So the fourth thing, and you might find this, you might say, well, that's nothing to worry about. But if you're looking at the overall feel of the car and how the car feels when you're driving it, not necessarily looks, but when you're actually driving it, I'm sitting here in what is supposedly a sports saloon, yet this steering wheel feels like it's from a truck or a bus. It's absolutely massive, and I don't understand why. Again, it doesn't particularly feel great, it doesn't particularly feel sporty either. In fact, it's quite, you know, plastic and basic. Again, I'll just need to maneuver this junction here. So you've got like your hands on it, and you actually have to move your fingers or your thumbs quite far to actually get towards the actual controls. It's a multi-function steering wheel, and the horn of the vehicle obviously is in the middle, but it has one leg which extends right towards the sort of the third leg coming right down here. And if you're turning, what happens is sometimes you'll accidentally, by no fault of your own, it's just by sheer poor design, you'll actually honk your horn when turning corners. Now come on, Mercedes-Benz, you can do better than that. I don't want to feel like I'm driving a truck or a bus in a sports saloon car, but that's what they've given us, so that's what we have to have. Unless you put an aftermarket steering wheel on, which, who can be bothered with that? You're probably not going to track one of these cars. You know, the vast majority of them are all automatics, and to be honest with you, I've done a bit of track day driving myself, and I've never seen one of these on a track, and probably for good reason, because they're slow and they're bouncy and they've got big steering wheels. Anyway, that was the fourth thing on my list. The fifth thing on the list is something that annoys me, and I absolutely hate this about any car, and in fact I even touched on it before there. It is interior rattles, squeaks, you know, knocks constantly when we're going over bumpy roads. You're getting constant vibrations, constant squeaks, constant rattles. And again, for the class of car that this is supposed to be, you know, this is a mid-range saloon car, which is the sport model, so it's got a lot of optional extras. It just feels like a £5,000 Daewoo Matiz. Granted, you know, it's a 10-year-old car. It's 2007 model, so I understand that things are going to deteriorate over time, but the sheer amount of things that seem to be going wrong and seem to be rattling, creaking, vibrating, squeaking, it's just not really acceptable to me. So if you do have one of these cars, then I guess that's what you've got to look forward to. If you're thinking about buying one of these cars, then I hope you've got a good radio system in yours so you can turn the music up, because that's exactly what I have to do. Turn the music up, magically all of these squeaks and rattles disappear. But you're driving along and no, it's just not really good. So those are my findings. You might have completely different findings on your car. You might have one of these as well, and you might think, none of that applies to me, none of that even bothers me. Well, fair enough, that's great. But, you know, everybody thinks differently about their car, and everybody has different opinions on what's right and what's wrong. So yeah, I mean, what I've done is as well, I haven't done it yet, I'm going to make another video on 5 things that I actually do like about the car, because I don't want this to seem like it's a total witch hunt, and I don't want it to seem like I absolutely hate the car, because I do like the car. You know, if I'm driving along with the music up, I'm driving on a nice straight road on a motorway perhaps, then yeah, it's fine, it's great. But when you're on your B roads, you just expect a little bit more, and that's where I'm coming from this. So marks out of 10. Yeah, I think I'd probably go for a 7 out of 10. I could say a 6.5, but there are aspects to the car that I do like as well. So I'll explain those in my 5 things that I love about this car, just so you don't think that I actually hate the car, because I don't. Like I say, I like it. But I've driven many cars. I've driven the E Class, I've driven the B Class, and the E Class equivalent of this car, like the same sort of model year, as the W211. And that is a great car. I absolutely love that car. However, it was written off. Somebody went into the back of us. The car was written off, smashed up the rear end. Therefore, we've no longer got that car. So, you know, a few cars down the line, we thought we'd give this car a try, because, you know, we liked the last Mercedes-Benz, but the suspension on the E Class, which is like sort of a high executive saloon, was much better than on this. That was really firm, and that was the sport version as well, but they've just got something a little bit mixed up there. Unless I've got something mixed up and I'm missing something, but I don't think I am. Anyway, that is my video, which is now complete. So I'm by no means an expert or anything like that, so please don't give it a thumbs down. Don't give it a thumbs down. Appreciate any thumbs up or any likes that you want to give it. Like I say, it's just me taking time out to give an honest opinion on this car. I don't want to slate it, because I know there's a lot of people out there that you know, really like the car and really love the car. And do you know, when I bought this car, I was so excited about buying it. I just couldn't wait to get my hands on it, because I just thought this is going to be. I always adored these cars. As soon as they were released, I'd always said I've got to have one of those cars one day. And you know, now I've got it, I'm just a bit disappointed, but I couldn't wait to get my hands on it. It was like, I don't know, it was like I felt, oh yes, I've got a really decent car here. And just the sheer disappointment of it. Maybe it's just, maybe I got my expectations a bit too high. Maybe the car looks better than it actually performs and drives on the road, because I think it's a beautiful looking car. Me personally, I think it's one of the nicest saloon looking cars actually on the road. And even a lot of saloon cars that come out, you know, today, 10 years later, like your Mondeos and your Kias and your Hyundais, I think they just look absolutely terrible. This car to me still looks absolutely perfect, looks wise, but just a few things, as I say, that let it down. So that's it. Sorry for boring you. Please give it a thumbs up. Anyway, and yeah, thanks for watching. See you next time.